We're back and ready for another segment of Rule Review. This is the Officials Institute, and today we will be talking about the situation of passing and crashing. These are very hard situations to manage, as we need to be aware of our primary coverage area in both the crash and the pass. So let's go ahead and look at some examples and watch some plays. Here we go. In our first video, we see a dribbler driving into the lane, passing the ball to his teammate, and crashing into the defender there waiting for him. Let's break this down and take a closer look. As the dribbler moves down the lane, he is met by two defenders blocking his path, and before the dribbler goes airborne to make the pass, the defender establishes a legal guarding position with 2 feet on the floor and facing his opponent, and is then run over by the offensive player, with the official correctly calling a team control foul. When we look at this play, breaking down each official's coverage area, we see the dribbler starting his drive in the center's primary coverage area. Whenever the ball is in an official's primary coverage area, the play involving the ball should always be in that official's primary focus, as it is here. The other officials, in this case the lead and the trail, will typically be making their primary focus on any off-ball action located in their primary coverage areas. As this type of pass and crash play continues, the official with the crash in his primary coverage area, in this case the center, will typically stay with and rule on that contact, since he has seen that play start, develop, and finish all the way to that point. The passed ball will be picked up and watched by the official whose primary coverage area it is passed into. In this situation, it is the lead. The last official in this play watches any off-ball players left in his primary area coverage, and if there are none, as there aren't here, should extend his view to the nearest players to help with the play. Let's go ahead and watch it once again. Our next clip is very similar to our last, with a dribbler driving into the paint and passing the ball to a teammate in the corner, only to crash into a defender waiting for him. So why is there no whistle on this play? When we look a bit closer, we see the secondary defender has 2 feet on the floor and facing his opponent, giving him a legal guarding position. Just because the dribbler passes the ball doesn't give him the right to knock this defender over, and a team control foul should be called. So how should we watch this play as a crew so we can call this correctly? As the play begins, the ball is caught at above the arc in the trail's primary coverage area, making this the trail's primary focus. The lead and the center also have their players in their primary areas to focus on, as well as players in their secondary that they need to be aware of. As the dribbler moves toward the basket, he leaves the trail's primary area and enters the lead's primary. When this happens, the lead must change his primary view to focus on the ball heading his way, while the trail changes his primary focus to the players that remain in his primary coverage area. The trail should, however, retain a secondary focus on this driving matchup, and the lead should keep his secondary focus on the defender in his primary, being aware that he may slide over to help and create a new matchup. Since the center has very little to watch in his primary, he should put more focus into the lane, anticipating any possible action on the drive, and be ready to assist in making a call. When the pass is made, the ball moves from the lead to the trail's primary coverage area, and since the trail is already focused on these players, he easily extends his view to cover the ball, while the lead keeps his focus on the possible crash in his area. So when the contact does happen, he'll have the perfect view from beginning to end to make the right call. However, if the lead for some reason fails to put air into the whistle on this play, the center is in a great position to make this call and should make this call, having also seen this play develop in his secondary. This is a good example for when an official should pause for a moment on a foul outside of his primary area, but then come in and make a call, realizing a whistle is needed on a high-impact play like this. Let's go ahead and watch it one more time. In this next clip, we see the dribbler drive past his defender along the end line, colliding into a secondary defender at almost the same time as he passes to his teammate at the opposite corner, and the officials allow the play to continue on. But should this have been a foul? If we slow this play down and look a little bit closer, we'll see the secondary defender is moving toward the dribbler in an effort to cut him off at the end line. And even though he is moving toward the dribbler just moments before contact, it appears that after he establishes a legal guarding position with his 2 feet on the floor and facing his opponent, he stops moving and holds his position when the dribbler initiates the contact, passing and then crashing into him, knocking him over. This should be a team control foul. When we analyze this as a crew, we notice the play starts in the center's primary coverage area with the ball as the center's primary focus. These post players should also be on the center's radar, keeping them in his secondary focus. Since the lead only has 2 defenders in his primary area to watch, they become a secondary concern, and the primary attention of the lead should be focused on this defensive matchup, the same 2 post players that are in the center's secondary focus. The trail's primary focus should be the defensive matchup at the top of the key while keeping an awareness of the 2 unguarded offensive players in his area. As play progresses and the dribbler makes his way towards the basket, the center maintains his primary focus on the ball and his secondary focus stays with the defender in the post as he transitions to help cover the drive. The lead, still aware of the 2 defenders in his primary, also maintains his primary focus on the defender in the post, outside of his primary area, but must also pick up the dribbler and anticipate any action that may happen in the paint if play progresses in that direction. So when the contact does indeed happen, it should have both the center and the lead looking at the play. Since the crash happens in the center's primary coverage area, the center should get first chance at making this call, but the lead can most definitely get this as well. The ball, as it is passed away, will enter the trail's primary coverage area, and the trail will pick up the pass and redirect his focus to the player in the corner who will be receiving the ball. Here it is again. In our last clip, we see the dribbler make his way down the lane, beating his defender, and then passing the ball off to his teammate, only to run into a secondary defender knocking him over. But was this a block or a team control foul? Let's take a closer look. As the dribbler moves down the lane and beats his defender, you can see that the secondary defender is in a legal guarding position, with 2 feet on the floor and facing his opponent. As the dribbler continues, he passes the ball and then initiates all contact into the stationary defender, knocking him over. This should be ruled a team control foul. Let's go ahead and analyze the crew coverage. As the play begins, you can see the dribbler and his defender are in the center's primary coverage area, making this the center's primary focus. The lead and the trail are also primarily focusing on the players in their primary coverage area. As the play progresses and the dribbler gets past his defender, the center, still focusing on the ball, needs to identify and be aware of a new possible matchup in his secondary. The lead, still focusing on the players in his primary, also needs to be aware of this new possible matchup in his secondary. As the play progresses even further, the ball gets passed into the corner, staying in the center's primary area and remaining the primary focus of the center. This leaves the impending crash between the secondary defender and the previous dribbler in the center's secondary focus. This is a good example that even though the lead is focusing primarily on the players in his primary area, he needs to alter his primary focus into his secondary to pick up this crash that the center is almost surely diverting his attention from. Lastly, since most of the players have worked their way out of the trail's primary coverage area, the trail must widen his focus in order to pick up the neglected players outside of this crash. Even though having a call by the center on this play is acceptable, the preferred official to rule on this pass and crash play should be the lead. This is because the center is and should be watching the ball in his area. He is following the passed ball, so when the crash happens, the center's attention is not primarily focused on that crash. The lead, however, has been focused on this secondary defender prior to the crash and is able to keep focus on this defender better after the pass, thus giving him better judgment of the legality of the guarding position of this defender. Let's go ahead and watch this one more time. There you have it, pass and crash. Hopefully you found this helpful, so next time you see this on the court, you'll be better prepared. Until then, have a good game.